Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a very somber movie, Z for Zachariah, a true dissection of the human soul.
Absolutely.
We have Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everybody.
And I am Phil Svitek. Welcome.
Welcome.
So Z for Zachariah, obviously, maybe perhaps not obviously, but it was a book in the 1970s, and now it's been adapted into a movie. Not a wide release movie, but a good movie.
Yeah, a really good film. I think it should be released wide.
So let's start with this. For those of you joining us, obviously this can be a little bit spoiler filled. We, as the intro implies, we dissect the movie. We assume that you've kind of seen it, or at least certainly don't mind that it's going to be spoiled. And we'll get into the production and kind of reviews and everything else. But let's start with our general impressions. Go ahead, Marisa.
Well, when I first watched this film, I realized there was only 3 people on it, and in this film. And then I, went on IMDb and saw if there was anybody else. No, it was just 3 people. But for a film with such a small cast, I was amazed by what this film made me feel and what made me think about everything in life. And I liked the visual aspects of it, the religious undertones underneath it, and just the message of the film.
And what did you think the message was?
That in a way, we all just need to learn how to work with each other to keep growing and keep moving forward.
Is that it?
I think that's definitely one of the messages.
All right, fair enough. You have so many of these post-apocalyptic stories, and some just use so much visual effects and the multi-budget. You're in like the $100 million range, and this I like because it really stuck to the core. It was a Garden of Eden type situation, and that's and rather than like, okay, here's the fighting, no, we're gonna explore humanity and what it means to be human.
And I think that's nice where they, if you strip it, because that's what this film really did well, was that it wasn't based off of special effects and high-tech gadgets and whatnot. It was more the human nature of everything and just how effective it was when you just take all the fancy stuff out and what you're left with.
Yeah, and you have to really, as you mentioned, 3 actors. So therefore, these 3 actors better be able to do that act.
And deliver.
And they did.
Absolutely. And
especially, I didn't realize, when I saw, okay, it's going to be the 3 of them, I thought Chris Pine was going to be a little bit more involved than he was. Not that he did a bad job, but then you look at it and you're like, wow, Loomis and Anne, whoever plays them better be that much even stronger, because we're going to get them for a very long time. Just them solo. I think, for the first 40, possibly even 50 minutes. Yeah,
I think it was around the 40-minute mark where Caleb came in. But because this movie adapted from the book, what I found out after watching this film, that I realized the story originally took place with only Loomis and Anne.
Yeah, Caleb was totally made up.
Yeah, but I think that would have added a completely different dynamic to the film had they gone the book. Complete book route.
I don't think that would, to me, that wouldn't have been as fun. I mean, internally you can maybe do that, but visually it's tough to because you got to get inside their heads. I mean, one of the things that Loomis, the man who plays him, obviously from 12 Years a Slave, he does he does a very good job of speaking non-verbally, but at the same time, there's only, this movie does test the patience a little bit of its audience, and I don't think you can go beyond 50 to an hour of that sort of thing with the two of them, and also how many times every TV show and great movie hinges upon a love triangle.
Yeah, but the interesting about this particular love triangle, it made you actually really think, especially with Caleb and just the dynamic he brought. You really added a somewhat of a, I don't want to say threatening, but just a whole different mentality that really makes things interesting. How do relationships work? How does love work? How does lust work? And just the way that they acted. Once, when we had Loomis and Anne first interact with each other, there was a certain friendship, but it changes in a way when Caleb comes in and how they treat each other.
It very much changes. I mean, again, they never explicitly state these things, but in many ways, he's kind of the older, not as hip dude. Nice, but not hip. And then you have Caleb, who's just like the young buck. Mm-hmm. So, and, obviously good looking.
Yeah.
So, it certainly, it changes it up a lot.
What I liked about Caleb, because he is an original character generally just for this film, is I wasn't sure how to feel about him. If I was supposed to root for him, being someone who came late into the story, do we trust him? And I liked how Loomis always was the voice, I guess, for the audience, and he's posing all the questions that we're all thinking. Do we trust Caleb? And at the end of it, I still don't know if I should trust him or not.
Why? I mean, to me, Anne's already shown that she's very willing to help, people. She did it for Caleb, or she did it for Loomis, and so the fact remains, especially being a Christian, that's your duty, is to help people. So why would you even turn your back against them?
Right. And I also like the fact that Caleb was also Christian. So it made, in a way, it would make sense that Anne would be more attracted to someone who's more like her compared to Loomis in the book. And I don't think they really, really touched it upon in the film, but in the book, Loomis is well known as an atheist.
Interesting. Well, I could see that. Obviously they didn't make it a huge point in the movie, but I could see it. But even so, I mean, the depending on how it is, right? So the major point of contention is obviously the church and using it to create the wheel, and so I could see an atheist being much more okay with it, but at the same time, I understand the reasoning for it. Even if you are a Christian, okay, here's this thing, and if I just think if we use it in the best of intentions, despite it being a holy thing, the wheel can be holy because it's literally providing power.
Holy water as well. Now, I did like how Loomis explained all of it when he's there at that whole scene when he's trying to justify why they're taking it down. I mean, granted, Anne has that Catholic guilt, as one should. You're taking down a religious place. But I liked the
But it doesn't serve a
approach.
purpose, so I did enjoy that, yeah.
Right, but I liked how Loomis approached it. Be like, maybe this was here in the end for us, for survival. There is a purpose to this compared to someone who might be, I mean, I'm not atheist, but someone who is atheist who could just take it down and have the justification it does nothing for us. But he came with the mentality of no, this will help us survive. There's a reason for this. Maybe your father put it here for us, not just God.
Well, obviously the dad was acting through God.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I said, I think one of the things that this movie does is it tests your an audience's patience, right? And part of that test is, okay, you got to be willing to ask yourself these questions about religion, humanity, and so forth, right? It does that brilliantly, where it takes these concepts and simplifies them to no end, and therefore you're forced to come face to face with it.
Right. And also, for testing patience, I think as just a general audience member watching this film, and granted, this film is fairly slow paced and more real time, it feels like, watching it and see everybody go about their day and their business. But going off of testing people's patience, I kept watching it because I was intrigued with the characters, but still waiting for something to happen. Mm-hmm. And that's I was like, okay, something has to happen to shake things up, and for them to go, I don't want to say crazy, but it's them to go off, and just something's gonna happen.
Well, it was very realistic of what you could imagine possibly if you had three people like this, what they could do, right? And the biggest thing that did end up happening was, besides Caleb leaving, quote unquote, was the sex scene, right? That was the catalyst for a lot of this. Mm-hmm. And, it came towards the end. And so I'm glad that they really took these simple things, and rather than just insert, oh, here's this stuff, they took a magnifying glass to all of it and really examined each of these various acts. I mean, just the fact that that Loomis, the fact that he was the one who said, you know what, like, now's not the time for you and I, trust me, I want to, but just not right now. I thought, was a bold choice, and it was interesting because he is an atheist. Mm-hmm. So you would think, he has no thoughts of God and premarital sex and this and that. It's just like, okay, yeah, as an atheist, it's just an act of survival. It's an act of, it's an act of pleasure, and let's just do it, and let's repopulate.
Right. What did you think of the moment when Loomis was talking to Anne and saying it's okay to have feelings for Caleb? Did you think that was reasonable? I personally felt like I don't think he had the right to say who she should like or who she should have feelings for.
So, I mean, I don't think... Again, at that point, because Loomis, in many ways, although he loved her, he was more, to me, like the father figure. And so he self-appointed him that right to be able to speak to her in that way. But then obviously then that takes away the point of, okay, if you really love her as a male to female, then you can't be a father figure to her. Mm-hmm. That's doesn't quite correlate that way.
Right. I think I found it interesting in that point of the movie. I didn't think he had the right to say it's okay because you don't have feelings for me now. You can have feelings for Caleb, the only other person existing right now.
Well,
I felt it was misplaced.
You thought it was spiteful on his part? Of like,
I think it might have came out of jealousy, but he was trying to have the front that, no, it's okay, you don't like me, but you can like Caleb.
Okay. And what did you think? Because it also touched upon briefly race issue, because he's like, oh, you're white.
Yeah, two white people like each other.
So, I mean...
Which is interesting because the book itself, Loomis is actually a Caucasian male. And they changed the race with casting Chiwetel.
So do you think that could have actually been it? Like, what do you think Anne's feelings towards them actually were? Because for me, if I had to put my money on anything, towards the end of the movie, she actually did love Loomis. But it's just one of those unfortunate things where... call it young and stupid or whatever, she ended up hooking with the quote-unquote hot guy, and it's the nice guy that gets the shit end of the stick.
Right. I saw Loomis and Anne's relationship as platonic in a way, and as a relationship built out of respect, because we know Anne's the hard worker. She will get stuff done, and Loomis is the brains, and he helps create and brains and brawn, I guess, in that way. But I saw them as a working partnership that's full of respect, not out of, and by extension you could say that was love and genuine care.
Did Caleb love her? Do you think?
I think it was more lust than love.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you know, by default, if you literally just have one person of the opposite gender to be able to possibly love, do you love them just by default, or do you choose not to love them? And again, then it questions the fact of, okay, do I not love her because I'm trying to be quote unquote better? Just by the default, if she's the only one, then I don't want to love her because of that. Again, it's just this weird cycle of,
do we love each other or do we not?
Yeah. Essentially, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. But again, I think that's what this film did so great. It made us think a lot. Despite how many people were in it, it really makes you think.
Absolutely. One of the questions I had, so one of the pivotal scenes was when they get the wheel working. Obviously, when he's using the pulley to bring Caleb up. What was your interpretation of this scene and the way kind of the second slip, as I'll call it?
I was scared for Caleb's life. It made me really question Loomis, because after him going to Anne saying it's okay to like Caleb because this was after all that, I now had the mentality that Loomis was very jealous of Caleb. And granted, now we got the wheel working, what purpose does Caleb serve anymore? Other than being there maybe for physical affection for Anne, but what other purpose could Caleb bring?
I think there's I mean, I get your point. The interesting part is, like, there's still stuff to do.
I'm sure. I mean, they still had to survive the winter. But I was very scared what Loomis was capable of doing. Mm-hmm. Knowing he was physically in the position of power and he could help Caleb after all that going down, and we don't see Caleb ever again. It made me question at the end, did Caleb really leave on his own?
I don't think he left.
Or did Loomis kill him?
I think Loomis killed him. Here's the thing, I don't know, I don't think, I shouldn't say
very ambiguous ending.
I don't think Loomis killed him. I think it was just, I just think he also didn't help him, and ultimately he just slipped.
Yeah. But
it goes deeper then, because then it's like, okay, well, what happened with the body?
Exactly.
Because then that was an act that you physically took away. You had to have hid the body.
Right. And we know that Loomis is physically capable and he has the strength to do that. I think that's where the ending of the film really got me thinking. I love the ending because, as ambiguous as it was, and granted, I might be a little frustrated. It's like, I want to know. I just want to generally know what happened. Well,
Anne doesn't know, so you're in the same boat.
I know. But do we trust Loomis now? Do we trust that Caleb left on his own accord?
Oh, I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, or he's only saying things just to make Anne happy.
I don't believe he left for a second, because he's always had Anne's emotions at heart. That's why, when he admits that, when he tells about her brother, right, that was very hard for him, and he hid that fact for a very long time, very strategically, and when he finally does say it, he had to, in a way. It was now or never, or just not even not now or never. It just, he had to.
Yeah, it also makes the question: is Loomis just a good guy or a bad guy? I
think he's a victim of circumstance.
Absolutely. But now the audience knows he had to kill Anne's brother for survival, or really he just left the brother on the side of the road. But in a way, he was responsible for the brother's death. But now, is he also responsible for Caleb's absence?
Yeah.
So do we trust him in the end?
Well, also note what his... Not that, I mean, you could read into it too much. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not reading too much into at all. The fact of when Anne and him first meet, he, drew his gun. When she was trying to help him, he was trying to help himself.
Yes.
And, and then eventually obviously their friendship continues, and he's like, hey, I'm not going to shoot you, but I need you to put this needle in me. Obviously still self-serving at that point. And then eventually he starts falling in love with her, but again, it begs the question of, is he falling in love with her because, number one, she's a female who serves a need. Number two, she serves a need in a bigger way in the fact that she's a fantastic farmer and so on and so forth.
Working woman. I'll give her that. What I found interesting, because compared to the book, when Loomis is taking the bath in the stream there, Anne doesn't tell Loomis that that's a radioactive stream. She doesn't. She refuses to say that knowledge. So throughout the whole book, Loomis is slowly getting more sick, progressively sick, whereas he gets to the point where he, in a way, goes mental and turns on Anne, where in the film that doesn't happen, so it builds up to something completely different.
I like that. I mean, I think it would have been too easy, like in this movie, the way it's done, for Anne to withhold that information, it would have made her character very unlikable. Too easy.
I mean, I can understand that, but it's also, they are the last people, as of right now, that we know that have survived. So it could have just been a method of survival.
For Anne? What you mean in the book?
Yeah, for the book aspect, had Anne didn't tell him, it could have been just a way to protect herself and still live for as long as she did.
I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to see how the book did it. Right. I don't know. I didn't read the book, unfortunately. But
neither did I.
But it came out in 1974, so it's been out a while. I've had a chance if I needed to.
Right, and actually the book was published posthumously, however you pronounce that, after the author's death.
Robert C. O'Brien is the author.
Yeah. I believe his wife and daughter actually finished the book based off the notes that the author had for the film, or for the book.
And that's tough. Any time you do that, it's tough only because I'm sure the book is fantastic, but
I want to read it.
Well, nonetheless, the point is that you don't know if this was the finished work. You don't know if he'd written a draft and then would have looked at, okay, I might need a love triangle, or you know what, if she's too unlikable, let me not have her withhold this information about the birth. So you don't know the choices that he inevitably would have made for the final version. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you start, I mean, unless I don't know of any author that literally outlines and puts notes and then whatever version the draft is in and says, okay, that's it, without making changes. You don't know that process, and so it's tough to say what is the final piece.
What's the final ending that he desired?
Yeah. And so, but I like the deviations of the movie. I think they do work really, really well.
I like that too, because I realized all the changes that the film made after the fact, which now knowing all these changes, it didn't make me dislike the movie any less, because I thought the movie itself was very strong.
I agree, and what I loved. So I mentioned what I call the repopulating the Earth scene, right? With them, just the fact of, hey, let's save the wine, and her, no, let's keep going, right? So she needs to, in order for her to even, I shouldn't say consider, but to do this act, she would need some alcoholic help. A little help from the beverage.
Liquid courage.
There you go. That's the term.
But you know what? In a way, I can understand that, she grew up a devout Catholic, maybe, and I'm not justifying this, but maybe it was Catholic guilt. Maybe she doesn't really need alcohol in her life. When you saw Loomis go to the grocery store, you can tell, all the alcohol was still there. Maybe she's just not a drinker. So maybe it was just something that helped lower her inhibitions.
That's why I found it interesting, the fact that he did ask her, you drink wine before, yeah?
Like, yes, I have.
So
In church.
So there you go. One of those story elements. I mean, the biggest ones for me was the quote unquote two sex moments, because they're not quite. One is obviously a sex scene, and then the quote unquote death of Caleb, or walking away, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. What about them?
No, I said those for me are the three biggest points of the movie. But what other stuff that you want to touch upon, story-wise?
For story-wise, I found it very interesting how it was one girl and two guys. I mean, if we flip the story to,
two girls,
one guy, what would happen? What would be emotional?
Ultimate guy's fantasy.
Yeah, seriously. But I think that would have added another element. But I really just like how simple this film was. Because sometimes the most effective films are the most simplest ones, where you're just left with your thoughts. And I love the fact that it wasn't hindered. Like, they didn't use the crutch of special effects to tell a good story.
Yeah. It was all very real and very realistic. Now, they initially were supposed to shoot the movie, and Amanda Seyfried was set to star as Anne.
Oh.
You didn't read this?
That I did not know, but...
Now, due to scheduling...
I like her.
You like Amanda?
I like Amanda Seyfried.
Okay, well, first and foremost, no matter who the actress that was going to play Anne was going to be, they were going to lower their makeup, to say the least.
I don't think they wore any makeup. I mean, Margot Robbie, she's gorgeous already, but I know she didn't really... She didn't...
Well, the makeup they wore, because she did talk about they had to make her look ugly.
I mean, that's terrible in life when you have to make ugly yourself.
Whatever way that I'm supposed to say it.
Your world is... That's your biggest problem in life.
But either way, no matter what actress they were going to take, they had to apply realistic makeup in the sense of, here's what someone would look like in this situation. And I
believe that.
But I'm trying to think of... I want to talk about Margot, but in terms of Amanda specifically, how do you think she would have done with how do you think the role would have changed if it was her?
I mean, Amanda as an actress, I think she's really good, but she doesn't have a lot of, out of her whole roster, she doesn't have a lot of serious dramatic roles.
Margot.
But but the roles that Margot has played have been in some ways very deep. Like they can get deep emotionally. And
the focus wasn't that deep. It was a fun movie, but it wasn't deep.
It was, but there were serious moments, and I feel with Amanda, all the roles that she has, I think one of the main dramatic roles I can really think of is Les Mis. But granted, that was a musical. That's a whole nother story. I feel Amanda would have brought a different, more energetic youth type of feel, I feel, with this movie.
Fair enough. I mean, at the very least, it's tough to... I'm not trying to compare them as actresses in any sort of way. I think they both... First off, they have a very different look, which, I'm not saying one's better or worse, and they have two different acting styles. And it would have just been interesting, I mean, because especially when you have three characters, that when you swap out one of the characters, it just you inevitably change the dynamic completely. So I just found that bit interesting, because she was cast back in 2013, May 2013, and then they didn't get going until way later. So on January 2014, it was announced that Margot Robbie would be the one to take that role.
But I like Margot in this film. I've liked Margot in every film.
I think she deserves it. I think she deserves a lot of credit in this movie. I think they all do. They all do.
For as little as they did, they really brought it. That's all I can say, is that they really elevated a story and characters with what little they had to go off of.
Well, because everything rides on them. If you don't buy them, none of this works.
Yeah.
Right. And so I found the interesting part, you know, in this Margot Robbie, obviously from Wolf of Wall Street, and you know, there was a couple of moments in Focus. She broke Chris Pine's on-screen virginity, and so she was the one who made up kind of the scene of like how things are gonna go. And so it was interesting to see her teaching Chris Pine of like, okay, then you're gonna take me to the sink, then we're gonna do this, and blah blah blah.
Well, that must have been fun.
I'm sure it was fun for him.
Yeah, of course. I think any guy would enjoy that. But I think what Margot can bring, I don't want to keep comparing, but like, had Amanda been casted in this role, I feel like she wouldn't have brought a more emotional depth that Margot could.
I don't know if you can say, I don't know.
But who knows? Amanda could have.
I think she could. I think the roles would have just been very different, you know, and it would have been interesting how the various things would have been handled, you know, each of the moments that we're talking about, because obviously what's in the script, but then you have to work with the director, but inevitably you make certain choices in the moment as you're acting, and the choices that Margot made versus Amanda, two very different.
Yeah, I also find it interesting how they aged up Anne, because in the book she's actually 16. So obviously we know there's sex scenes in this film, so to avoid the whole statutory rape storyline, they had to age.
Made her a little older.
Make her older.
Yes.
And bring Margot in.
This I agree with.
But I like that. You know what?
We couldn't have Katniss Everdeen in that story.
No, and I can't imagine nothing. I mean, just thinking of a storyline where a 16-year-old would survive in a post-apocalyptic nuclear war.
I'm sure it's doable.
It is doable. I'm not saying it's not. I'm thinking of all the other stories that have Katniss Everdeen, but she has
Games.
But in fairness, she has a whole community that's also going through it. What I keep thinking is the story of Island of the Blue Dolphins. It was a teenage girl who was by herself for years and still survived. So I had that mentality watching this film. Had it been a younger teenager going through all this.
Fair enough.
Very possible, though.
Now, Tobey Maguire was supposed to originally play Caleb. Speaking of casting choices. He's not as rugged as like Chris Pine. He's just like kind of becoming the sex symbol.
True, very true. But Toby could have brought a more mysterious element to it.
No, I don't want Spider-Man playing him.
No, but I'm not even thinking Spider-Man. I'm thinking like other darker roles that Tobey Maguire's played, like Brothers, the one with Jake Gyllenhaal. I think it's called Brothers. That film went very dark with his character. So I can see Toby bringing a very dark, mysterious element to Caleb, which, again, it made me question, do we trust Caleb? Is he a good guy? So I could totally see Toby being this role. Although Toby did become a producer for this film.
Yes, he did. Also, speaking of Chris Pine, he apparently had too much fun at the rap party, and this is not something to aspire, but he got a DUI, and they were in New Zealand, so in New Zealand.
Ooh. And I'm not sure what their laws are over there. I imagine not good.
They took away his license for about 6 months.
Okay. Well.
So couldn't drive for 6 months. At least not in New Zealand.
Well, that's unfortunate. I mean, especially if you're in the public eye, I figure one should be more diligent about that. But that's unfortunate for him.
It is unfortunate for him.
I hope he learned his lesson.
I don't know. Here's the thing. Like, the way they filmed is, to me, looks like in the middle of nowhere. And so I'm not trying to condone or justify this in any sort of way. But number one, I imagine it's hard to... I don't know if there's Ubers there.
Probably not.
Not where they were shooting. Number two, like...
I can understand he was drinking.
It's an open road. So that's what I imagine this to be. So, you know
get that. Not that we're justifying or condoning driving under the influence. Absolutely not. I understand he could be drinking because, granted, I come from a fairly barren place where literally my place in Illinois, the ratio to bars to population, there were more bars. Like I don't even know the actual number, but it's not good. It's a high amount of bar locations and alcohol and a lot of reports of underage drinking.
Well, what I'm saying,
compared to
I mean, it was also a rap party.
population.
It was a rap party too.
I
So
mean,
of course
yeah,
you're gonna
celebrate, but I can understand if he was drinking.
Yeah. So, now, in terms of the director, I didn't actually know a lot of his work. Did you? He's done All the Real Girls, Undertow, and kind of that's pretty much it.
I did not know his work.
Craig Zobel.
Apparently, he made a film for Sundance a couple of years ago. I think back in 2012, called Compliance, which he worked with a lot of the same people from the Compliance film on this film for Z for Zachariah. Like the composer also worked on Compliance, also worked on this film. So he used a lot of the same people for that film.
Yeah.
But that film got... I hear there are mixed reviews, but you either loved it or hate Compliance. I have not seen Compliance, but after watching Z for Zachariah, I want to see Compliance.
Well, there's in terms of Z for Zachariah, there was an original TV adaptation of that was part of the BBC Play for Today series, and that aired in 1984 with Anthony Andrews as Loomis, Pippa Hitchley as Anne, with the story set in Wales. So that one was just two people. So I don't know if you can get a copy of this or where it's available. I did not find anything, but it aired in 1984. Now, interestingly enough, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil is similar because it's got three different people. It's got Harry, Mel, and Inger. Right. So that kind of has a... I didn't see it, but a triangle nonetheless. Yeah. Whether I love triangle, I'm not quite sure.
And Craig said that film was a big inspiration for this film as well, the way he went about executing this film. And also he mentioned The Quiet Earth, which also has the same type of feel to it, and that was also filmed in New Zealand.
Yeah. And then, you have similar people have compared it to I Am Legend, which is also based off the Omega Man. And so it's one of those things. Those are a little bit different to me because yes, they follow one specific person and you spend a lot of time with them, but they're not as similar as the other ones that we mentioned.
Right. I mean, I Am Legend basically off of one man's performance until you bring a female into the story.
But you have the threat of zombies the entire time.
True. There's a overall underlying story going with it. And also Castaway. I mean, you see Tom Hanks throughout the whole film mostly by himself, but in the end he does get back with civilization. So I'm trying to think of just other stories that the performances were strong enough just with as many people as they did. I can't really think of it. And Z for Zachariah really
Life
did.
of Pi?
Life of Pi a little bit. Yeah.
But that had a lot of visual effects in that film.
And a lot of visual effects, and for a lot of the portion with him was a long part. What's the Angelina Jolie directed one? Came out this year.
Oh, are you talking about the Olympian? Goodness.
The runner.
Yeah.
Survivor. Hope.
Unbroken.
That's it.
I had to think about that.
But a large portion of that was spent with him on a boat. I mean, there's examples of these various things, but to take something like when you think post-apocalyptic, that's when you do think a lot of visual effects and so on and so forth, and a lot of action perhaps. And this movie took elements of those movies that we're mentioning, and it really got down to the base of it, which was at the end of the day we're humans and we're defined by our actions. At least that's for me.
Also, what I loved about this film was the visual overall look. granted, post-apocalyptic, yeah, you would think effects, but the way that they used the environment and how they showed it compared to, I mean, the beginning of the film is very blue, saturated blue gray tones, and then when you bring in Loomis, there was a lot of color to the world that they were living in. It was like, it doesn't look like anything really did happen. It just looked like a beautiful landscape that they were living that, you know, was rather self-contained. I loved visually how they shot it.
It looked great. And, you know, the nice part is when you're just basically kind of in that one location overall, you can have some fun with it. You know, you have time to set it up. The nice part is it doesn't feel like it was rushed. No. As much, you know, you've got these actors, and I think all three of them, these are really fantastic actors, right? I mean, Margot Robbie, she's going to be in Suicide Squad. Chris Pine just continues to be on the up and up. You know, with Loomis's character, yeah, he's been 12 years a slave, and so he's the lesser of the two, let's say. But nonetheless, I feel like it's not like these guys needed this movie. And so they're going to put their efforts into it and make it great. And so I feel like rather than just be like, okay, we got, 10 days with these people. No, they're like, okay, let's shoot this the right way. Let's explore all the possibilities with this.
Right. And I think that's just a testament to all of them as actors, just how well they performed.
And as a crew, I think it's a mentality thing.
Yeah. I'm just still blown away with as well as this movie came out, with performances visually, with as little amount of people in it.
Yeah, and the nice part is the crew can be low too. I mean, overall, I imagine it's a very intimate set.
Yeah, that's what the director Craig Zobel said during filming. In between takes, when he was talking to his cast, there was only 4 of them, and they got to the point where they communicated so well. Everything was on a shorthand basis, that they knew each other and how they connected in that way. And every time they were talking, they were in like a physical huddle, just shorthand talking, because they understood each other so well. And I think it just goes to show sometimes less is more.
I think this movie just did something brilliant. I think for anyone who's in film school that wants to make a movie, this is, granted, you might not get the big stars, but it deserves a lot of credit. And you know what? For my money's worth, you have a movie. This came out same week as We Are Your Friends. That movie, over 2,000 screens, and it just bombed. Whereas this movie, it deserves better.
Hardly any screens, and it should be everywhere.
Deserves better. So it premiered at Sundance of this year, and the interesting part was that it came out day and date, as we call it. So it came out into the movie theater and VOD on the same day. So interesting kind of how it's doing there. I couldn't get exact numbers because obviously the theater numbers are skewed off, because then you also got to take into account the on-demand numbers and so on and so forth. But like I said, for my money's worth, way better than We Are Your Friends.
Oh, for sure. And the fact that I actually put in effort to go see We Are Your Friends and paid money to go see it. Whereas,
hopefully you paid for this movie.
I did pay for this, but I did watch it in the comforts of a very comfy seat here, in the comforts of my own place. So I just, what I liked about this film, granted, I didn't know going into this film that this premiered at Sundance, and I was like, really? Wow. So much time has passed when the first, and I felt like the only thing, and I don't want to, because I really did enjoy this film, this should have had way more promotion for such a good film.
I 100% agree. I couldn't agree with you. I mean, overall consensus from people who've seen this is that it's a good movie. Now, it's not a movie for everybody, because, as I mentioned multiple times, it does test your patience. But guess what? I actually would argue that it tests your patience a little bit less than We Are Your Friends.
Yeah, for sure. Testing patience. I kept watching again, thinking it was going to build to something. I think maybe I was hoping it was going to go the Lord of the Flies route, where, if anyone knows that story, the boys who are stranded for such a long time, in the end they just snap and they turn against each other. And I think I was kind of waiting for that in this film. I was waiting for that moment where something snaps and they were going to turn on each other. Especially
Who has the
Loomis.
conch?
Which one?
The conch.
Who
He's
has
talking
the conch?
and
but
Lord of the
conch.
Flies. Yeah, that he's making a reference.
Yes, true.
I'm glad it defied a lot of conventions. Mm-hmm. It really just did something different. Simple but different. It's
Definitely defied conventions, and I think that's also why I liked it, because I had predictions, I guess you could say, throughout. This is what I was expecting, but it went against my expectations, and I think that's why I liked it also, because it didn't live up to cliches.
It didn't. There's existential questions of faith, humanity, and loneliness. These are all things that are pondered.
And we're still pondering.
And still very much pondering. I mean, and part of why I don't want to answer, I hate kind of getting into, I hate being didactic and kind of talking about those various things. I think for you, here's the thing. Part of why we watch movies, part of why we read books, and hopefully the good ones. Now, I'm not talking about the what do you call it? Just the crap, let's say, for lack of a better term, right? But actual good books that
mainstream.
Not even mainstream. There's some good stuff in mainstream, but I'm talking about the stuff that's pure entertainment that you just browse through just because you're mindless and you just want to do something for the sake of doing something. When you can find a piece of actual work and it moves you in that way, and it can kind of, like this, whether it answers stuff for you or not, I think you're able to formulate your own opinion, and I think that's better versus me telling you, okay, here's what the opinion you should have.
Right. It's not black and white. There are questions out there. And that's what I think this film did so well, that it posed so many questions and made us just think in the end.
Yeah.
But it's not to the point where it's frustrating because we didn't get all the answers that we were looking for, but you still think about it.
Yeah. Indeed. Now, do you have actual specific numbers of this movie? Because, like I said, I couldn't find that.
Not really, other than my own personal opinion that I felt I would give this movie a 12 out of 10.
Well, I have the reception, but I just don't have the box office specific. All right, fair enough. Well, the good news is if you're listening to us and you haven't seen this movie, a lot of it's spoiled for you, but nonetheless, it's available on demand, so you can check it out there. It's in limited release. Hopefully, maybe it'll get wider. And you know what? If you have seen it, tell your friends to see it too. It's worthwhile, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if you really just like deep thought-provoking movies and just storytelling in and of itself, definitely watch this.
Yeah. And you know what? For shame on anyone who... Because I've seen a lot of articles just specifically on Margot Robbie's makeup and how she was, quote-unquote... Why does that have to be the focus of it? We get it. Margot Robbie's pretty.
Yeah, no, she's gorgeous. I get that. I don't think that hinders anything on the performance she brought.
No, not at all. Not at all. But the fact that has to be like an article that's written up.
Yeah, and the fact that that's just a thing.
Anyway, okay. All right. So, thank you guys for joining us on another Anatomy movie here at the Popcorn Talk Network. In the meantime, let us know your thoughts and opinions on this movie. It's, like I said, it's deep and stuff like that, and so we try to give you guys enough context and our own opinions and kind of the backstory of everything, but let us know, did you read the book? Would love to have some perspective on that. Eventually, I would like to read the book myself. Sometimes time is not on my side, so it doesn't allow for that, but hey, eventually.
There's so many different underlying stories to this, and then, just the religious undertones, too. I mean, Z For Zachariah, just the title itself.
Yes, talk about that.
Well, we did see the reference, but in the book, because we know Anne's a devout Catholic, there's the whole story. A is for Adam, and Z and Adam's the first man on Earth. Z would be the last man on Earth. Z for Zachariah.
Okay. Interesting. There you go. There you have it. All right. So where can the people follow you, Marisa?
You can follow all of you can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
And follow us here at Movie Anatomy, specifically for Anatomy of a Movie, and The Popcorn Talk on Twitter and Instagram for Popcorn Talk. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you're over on iTunes, subscribe there. However you listen to us or watch us, just you want to get us. So go ahead and subscribe. Let us know your specific thoughts on this movie, or our back catalog of probably 250 movies that we've done for Anatomy of a Movie specifically. We'll only continue to do more and more. Right now we're in a little bit of a lull, but that's why it was great to find a gem like Z for Zachariah at a time when movies, it's dumping ground.
Aren't up to par yet.
Yeah, but we've got, the Oscar movies will be coming out soon, so a lot to look forward to there. And we look forward to talking with you. And by the way, that's just Anatomy of a Movie. We've got 10 plus shows on this network, ranging from Jedi Alliance, which is all Star Wars, Box Office Breakdown, Meet the Movie Press, Marvel Movie News, DC Movie News, Cosplay Coach, Bollywood, which is all about Bollywood. Oh man, so many. So many. Profiles with Malone Mance, and I won't answer any. I'm sure I've missed a lot of them. Movies. We'll see you next time on Anatomy of a Movie. Thank you guys for joining us.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.